I'm so excited today to have an author and someone with lived experience of inflammatory arthritis named Alison Magali on the Arthritis Life podcast. Welcome.
Hi, Cheryl. Thanks so much for having me on the Arthritis Life podcast. I've listened to lots of episodes and I love learning from your guests and being inspired by them. So it's really exciting to be here myself today.
Yeah, that's wonderful. No, and by the way, I should be putting this link at the end for anyone who wants to come on the podcast. I have a little like application form just so that I can vet the person to make sure they're not trying to like sell some sort of, weird thing or something.
Right.
Like I want to share my story, aka like sell my snake oil. But yeah, I love when people who are like fans of the podcast want to come on and share their story. That's awesome. And so can you let the listeners, of which you're one, know where do you live and what is your relationship to arthritis?
Definitely. So I'm a mom, a part-time special education teacher, and a picture book author, as you said. I live in Ontario, Canada, about an hour from Toronto, with my partner, two daughters, and our ragdoll cat. And I have IBD, specifically ulcerative colitis. Also have ankylosing spondylitis, called AS for short. And apparently IBD-related arthropathy is what my rheumatologist has told me it's called.
Yeah. Yeah. And by the time this episode comes out, we will have had a couple more episodes actually with people with IBD or irritable bowel disease, which is different than irritable bowel syndrome like IBS,
Yes.
right? And there is a very big relationship between IBD and other forms of inflammatory arthritis, which most people don't know about. So I'm glad that, I mean, I'm
Yeah, it
sorry that
seems
you
to be
experienced that.
pretty common, yeah, from what I've heard.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I would love to hear more about your diagnosis journey slash saga, as we often call it, for both, IBD and ankylosing spondylitis, like which came first and was it an easy path to diagnosis or kind of a rocky road or a mixture?
Well, with the dual diagnosis, the IBD started first, so I'll start there. It was around my late 20s. I got sick with a stomach flu, and the symptoms kind of went on and on. After visiting my family doctor, he referred me to a GI doctor who did a scope and then eventually diagnosed ulcerative colitis. And when I first found out, it was pretty devastating. I was young. I just remember like trying to get to my car before crying. I couldn't believe that I had this chronic illness, that no one in my immediate family had it. I had I think a second cousin who had it, so I knew a little bit about it, but I didn't know her very well. And then with the arthritis, the first symptom I had was intense SI joint pain. That was when I was pregnant with my first daughter. So I thought it was just a pregnancy related thing. So the last few months of work, I had to take off because I could barely walk. And after I had my first daughter, the pain it did get significantly better, but it would sort of flare off and on with time. And then with my second pregnancy, exact same thing happened. Um, and then after my second daughter was born, she was a newborn, I had this sudden flare up of my lower thumb joint. And it was really, really devastating because I couldn't even pick her up, feed her. I was breastfeeding her at the time. I couldn't
Mhm.
even hold her. So I went to
I
the ER.
That's oh, sorry. I was just gonna say that's really common that even in people who don't have an inflammatory arthritis, it's called like quote unquote mommy thumb. It's like inflammation of the
Oh,
CMC,
really?
carpal metal carp. Yeah, I learned about it in occupational therapy school even. But if you already have like a simmering or a full blown inflammatory arthritis diagnosis, you're more likely to have that mommy thumb occur from your ongoing autoimmune condition. But also people who don't even have a systemic disease can sometimes just get that irritation just because of all the lifting. And I mean, it's physical labor taking care of a baby and a small child. So I also
Oh,
had
oh,
that
that's
and had,
interesting. Yeah,
yeah,
I didn't know that that was a common
yeah,
thing because, yeah, it's 10 years ago. So great, great to know.
yeah.
But yeah, so I went to the hospital, got some prednisone. And then from there, I was referred to a rheumatologist. But it took almost a year to get in to see her because I'm in Canada and healthcare can be so slow. So I had to wait for about a year to get in. So then I found out, yes, I do have arthritis that's related to the IBD. But it was sort of like intermittent. It wasn't, sometimes I'd be fine. Other times, my knees would hurt for a few days. Things would come and go in all different joints. And then in about 2020, the SI pain that had been going off and on got worse. And I also had a new mid back pain that was quite severe. And that was something new. Even I remember even like laying down I'd be in pain. Like there was nothing that I did that didn't hurt my back. So I just did a lot of, so that was during the pandemic, of course. So I was using a TENS machine. I noticed that walking helped a lot. I was doing a lot of the pain cream and everything and heating pad. So then at that point I had a rheumatologist. So she sent me for MRIs and then diagnosed me with the AS.
Yeah, and
And
can I
that was
just
pretty upsetting too.
yeah, and I just wanna say for anyone listening, I wanted to make sure to define what the SI joint is because you mentioned earlier SI, that's like
Oh, right.
sacroiliac joints, like lower back. So just in case people don't know, I always try to, like, define
Yeah, there's so many
acronyms.
acronyms,
But
right? So it's
yeah,
like
and TENS is
AS,
like
SI.
I always forget what TENS stands for,
Oh,
but
I don't even know.
transcutaneous electrical neurostimulation, I believe it is, but it's a pain management technique. But sorry, but you were talking about the actual, like, emotional, um, response to the diagnosis, which is, I'm sure huge.
Yeah, so it's just well, and it was interesting because even though like I had lived with IBD for quite a few years at that point, and I was come to terms with that, but then I had read about AS before getting diagnosed, and I just remember thinking, oh, you read all the things and thinking, I really hope it's not this because this sounds really bad, and then it was that, so I was pretty upset, and I didn't want to talk about it for a while. I just remember not wanting to tell friends like that I had another diagnosis and get all into the details because it was just really upsetting when I talked about it. I
Yeah,
was just
and
wanted to live in denial for a little bit on that one.
that's a protective mechanism. Yeah, your brain's trying to protect you by saying, "Let's not think about this right now." Was your IBD at the time pretty active, or was it under control? Just out of curiosity.
Well, not I was not in a huge flare, no. It was fairly in remission, maybe, very mild, I'd say, mild.
Mm. And how old were your kids?
So when I got so with
Yeah.
the AS was about 5 years ago, so about 5 and 7.
Okay, okay. So yeah, they weren't as much at the age where you still need to pick them up and stuff all the time, but it's hard no matter what. I'm just
Yeah.
trying to imagine like
Well, and then just knowing because I had the SI joint pain when I was pregnant, I'm
mhm.
sure that I had it for years before that. It was just that, and as a lot of people say with AS, that it usually takes quite a few years to actually get diagnosed with it. So I'm pretty sure that the pregnancy pain was part of it because I did have SI joint pain off and on for years. It would flare for a while and then it would just go away. So I was just used to it coming and going. So I didn't really think I
Yeah.
could do much about it.
Yeah, totally understandable. And so what are some of the I'm now saying this I've changed my questions a little bit and because talking about your treatment journey would probably take a really really long time so I've started to say what are some of the highlights and the lowlights of your treatment journey, for AS but and IBD, anything you want to share about that?
Sure. Well, when I was first diagnosed with IBD, I was young and I hadn't really taken medications before. So I was very resistant to taking medication. So I try to control it with diet for about a year, gluten-free, dairy-free, sugar-free, everything. So that was quite difficult. It didn't help much. It helped a little bit, but not much. So I eventually started a 5-ASA medication. It worked well enough. I still had ups and downs. Had to take prednisone a few times for some flares for a few years. And then about 5 years ago, I had the worst flare I've had, which was the closest I came to having surgery. At that point, I was hospitalized, and then we did Remicade as sort of the last resort before surgery. And luckily, Remicade helped. I had a lot of side effects with that. So then I switched to another medication, another biologic. It's called Entyvio, and that is mostly absorbed in the gut. So it was really good for IBD. But then once I got diagnosed with the AS, I had to switch to another biologic because we needed a biologic that would cover both of the chronic illnesses. So I switched to Symphony, which I'm still taking now. So I'm still doing that and then just doing some supplements and exercises and stuff that I find help for me.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's first of all for people listening who aren't familiar with, IBD, it is fascinating that even though you would consider one as like a GI condition and one is a joint condition, that's just face value. But actually, deep down, they're similar conditions where your immune system is faulty in that it's mistakenly attacking the wrong part of your body. So in the case of like AS, it's your joints and your back initially, and that leads to like systemic effects. And in the case of IBD, it's like the tissues in your GI system. And I think a lot of people are surprised when they learn that, oh, you can take Remicade for IBD only, not regardless if you have any joint involvement, and it can work for that. So your story is like an illustration of that. But it's hard to come to terms with needing medication. Was there anything that helped you take that leap to take Remicade, or was it more just like we are in such a survival mode right now, we're just gonna throw whatever, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah. Oh,
whatever
yeah.
at it to
Well,
avoid
yeah. I
surgery?
was
Yeah.
in the hospital for 10 days.
Wow.
I had like diarrhea, like at least 12 times a day. I had lost a lot of weight. So it was just like, I need something. I didn't want to
Mhm.
have surgery, obviously. So
Mhm.
yeah, it was, and
Yeah.
prednisone had worked really well before for me. So, and then
Mhm.
it just didn't work anymore, as that happens for people. So
Yeah.
yep,
That's
there wasn't
that's
really
really
anything else to take at that point.
well, and if people don't know, again, with surgery for IBD is typically like an ostomy, right? Like,
Right.
and the episode that's going to come out a little bit. Oh my gosh, let me get organized. But the episode's going to come out similar time as this. I have to get out my other like little cheat sheet to remember when things are coming out. Um, it's going to talk about um Tina, yeah, right before yours actually. That's perfect. Um,
Nice.
Tina, who Prakash, who has ulcerative colitis, she has an ostomy and talks about, it was very
Okay.
helpful for her. It's not the thing most people are most excited about sometimes, but you can live really well with
Yes,
an ostomy
definitely.
bag.
Yes.
Like it's like a surgery where your poop, instead of coming out, your anus like normal, it's come like typical, it comes out in a little bag and you have to change that bag and stuff
Right.
like
In
that.
the abdomen. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's just to most people who don't have experience with it, it's like, "Whoa, that's really kind of would be really tough to deal with." But so what's crazy. Or that's what's surprising about these conditions is you don't realize how tough you can be until tough is your only choice, right?
Right.
I didn't make that up. I saw that on like Instagram somewhere.
I like it.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, this is a lot, obviously, to cope with the pain in your back and switching on the medications and stuff. And, one of the things that we talked about before starting to record, and one of the ways I found, your work is through the importance of, creativity and having creative outlets that can, help with coping. So how did you start, or have you always been like an artistic person, like interested in like children's books and stuff like that? Or, sorry, this is like 9 questions in one. Tell me about the role. Here we go. Tell me about
Okay.
the role of creativity.
The creativity world, yes. Well,
Yes.
yeah, as a kid, I loved being creative. I loved, just going up to my room, doing my thing, sewing, drawing, writing stories, writing songs and poems, all that stuff. Um, then after high school, I was really busy with university. Then I went to teachers college, learning the ropes of being a teacher, which is a lot. And I mean, has its creativity in its own right because you're creatively planning lessons, but nothing for, my own personal enjoyment, creativity. And then once I was diagnosed with IBD, I just focused so much of my time on, this. So I went on the special diet for a full year. So that was so time consuming. I did so much research. I was constantly sourcing out ingredients, making things. So I was just very busy. And then all the appointments and everything, alternative therapies. And then after that, I had young children, which, as we know, there's no time for anything. So fast forward to the pandemic again, as most of us did. I had a lot of extra time during the pandemic, not going anywhere. And I had a growing need to fill myself up with something creative. My girls were a little bit older by that point. One night I wrote a poem, and then from there I just started thinking about, what genres am I really interested in? Being an elementary teacher, and then just my whole life I've loved picture books. So I decided, okay, I'm going to try this. So I took a course And I met some really amazing and inspiring creators, and I just continued learning. I took more courses and just kept working at it and started writing. So I'm much busier now than I used to be before I started writing. And sometimes it's overwhelming and exhausting and I need a break, but I'm just a lot more fulfilled. Actually, my gut feels better too. Thinking about plot lines and problems in my story keeps my mind active and distracts me from back pain and and also my health related worries.
Oh my gosh, that's so you encapsulate that so beautifully because I do think there when you get really involved in a hobby or a passion, like for me, one of mine is swing dancing. And sometimes it is exhausting. Sometimes it does make you in the moment like a little bit more like busy or more overwhelmed, but then long term that it is fulfilling, filling your cup and giving you a
Yeah.
purpose. And I'm just I love picture books as well. I'm one of those people who's like, I want to write a book someday too. So you're inspiring me.
Oh, good. Thank
Yeah.
you.
And but I want to talk, yeah, I want to give you a chance to share with not just me, but the audience here a little bit more about the book. A lot of people want to write a book like me, but not everyone actually does it. So you actually did it.
Yeah, it's one of those things that everyone's like, I've always wanted to do that.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
yeah, so it's hard to actually say, okay, I'm going to do this thing and pursue it. Yeah,
And so
like,
Kenzie's Little Tree is your book. I would love to hear just the whole story of how you came up with the idea, what it's been like, and all that.
definitely. All right. So, as you said, it's called Kenzie's Little Tree. It's a picture book. It's illustrated by Emily Leduc and published by Orca Book Publishers, and it hits shelves soon on March 11th, 2025. In the story, little Kenzie and her family plant a fragile tree in their yard one summer day, and she promises to keep it safe. Only when fall and winter weather flare, along with her mom's chronic illness, Kenzie worries that her promise will be broken. Kenzie's Little Tree reminds us that though the world is constantly changing and oftentimes difficult, we can be bold and strong, just like the little tree. And I'm super excited for this book to be out in the world and in the hands of kids. I've also written a family discussion guide in collaboration with a psychologist that I hope will be a helpful tool to guide conversations about experiences, thoughts, and feelings, and also a teacher's guide with lesson plans to accompany the book. And they're all available in my link tree or on the Orca Book Publishers website.
And I'm going to put links to all these in the show notes, which are always on the Arthritis Life website, by the way. So just so you know, you can scroll
Okay,
down to the
awesome.
bottom of the episode description for each, regardless, if you're on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you're listening, you can scroll down to the show notes and they'll have a link there. But sorry, continue. Yeah, I love that you
And
have a family discussion guide and a teacher discussion guide. That's awesome.
yeah, because I think it's just the book, it lends itself really well to both because it's an important book for families that live with chronic illness, and also for families that don't, because it also deals with change and just difficult scenarios or experiences for children that it could bring out a lot of discussions. And then it's also a really good fit for the classroom because it has tie-ins with this, it goes through a full year. So we have science tie-ins with the seasons, and then I have a writing lesson where, because in the book, Kenzie does a lot of each season, she does like a fun act. Each Saturday, it's their family is for family adventures. So they do fun family stuff together. So there's a little writing activity for kids about what fun adventure do you like to do with your family, and just some reading tie-ins as well. So
Yeah, I think I've said on the podcast before that, there's such a need for disability representation in all sorts of media, TV shows, movies, books. And the sooner we can have that representation in a child's life, the better. And one of the parts of the book I really liked because I got an advanced copy. Thank you.
you're welcome.
That you explicitly, is it okay for me to like, I'm not going to read a part of it because I know I probably can't read a part of it, but I'll like summarize one of the
Oh,
pages.
definitely.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
that's totally fine.
So like there's a picture, art is beautiful. There's a picture of Kenzie hugging her mom, in the mom's laying down and hugging her in her bed. And it's talking about how mom has been tired a lot. So you're talking about the fatigue, not just like
Right.
which is there's very little representation of that. and, eating bothers her belly, so saying, like, she's having a, difficulty, and she's resting a lot and taking a lot of medicine, and then it's really beautiful as you talk about, like, the colors of the medications and how they're similar to the colors of the falling leaves, so it's tying into, like, the seasons. I'm telling you this as if you don't know this, let me
Yeah,
see your
thank
book.
you.
Um
Yeah, I actually used to have I had a medication that was like a dark red, like and then I had an orange one as well. So
I know.
that's actually like a true story.
Okay, no, this is so funny. I have my beautiful, like, multicolored pill box, and I'm a big Taylor Swift fan, and I have some pills that are light blue and some are, pink, like, light pink, and there's
Yeah,
album called Lover, which the colors
right.
are, like, light pink and light blue, and I'm like, "Oh my
Like
gosh."
pastels, yeah.
Yeah, my medications are like Lover today, and, and you talk about how Kenzie talks about how she's worried about her mother. And the mother says, "I'm stronger than I look, and you're strong too." And then mom gets hospitalized. And it's like a lot of times people are afraid, like parents are afraid of showing vulnerability in front of their children. And they think that they have to be showing strength all the time. Right. But it's so important to show that, parents go through stuff too, and they persevere. And anyway, was that like a conscious choice on your part to show that instead of just being like a lot of these narratives are like, and then mom like
Yeah.
conquered it and then she was all better and like no one was ever sick again, and like that's not realistic for chronic illness,
Yeah,
right?
definitely. I wanted something as a narrative, like a story, because I really connect with story. And I also definitely I wanted to represent it, like, having lived experience with it. And that was one of the big inspirations that um like when I came back from the hospital, we didn't talk about that time I was talking about when I was hospitalized and started taking Remicade. When I
Mhm.
came back, my husband and I didn't talk about it too much with the girls. They were pretty young, they were 4 and 7. But what happened was every time I would go out after that, they'd be really worried that I'd be going to the hospital again. Every time I'd have a little pain,
Mhm.
they'd get really anxious thinking that I was going to the hospital again. They just kept thinking that I was leaving because I suddenly left. I was just supposed to
Mhm.
go for a test. I was just supposed to go for a scope. Then I got to the hospital in a different city and they wanted me
Oh,
to stay there. So I didn't even properly say goodbye to the girls because I thought I was like, oh, I'll be back for dinner kind of thing. And it turned
mhm.
into 10 days. So
Wow.
we then talked to a family therapist and we found out that repeated conversations about trauma can help children better process their emotions. So then we started talking about it a lot and that did help. So that was definitely one of the inspirations or reasons that I wrote the book. I wanted it to be something that shows families that it's really important to have these discussions. It's important for kids to be able to share that. And so I'm hoping that it does start a dialogue in that way.
I think it definitely will, and you're so right. The storytelling is how the young children, especially like the preschool age, I mean, but how we all learn. And I remember this is not exactly the same, but my I had like three really uh, acute health issues in the span of 1 year that had nothing to even do with my arthritis, actually. But from a young age, I would tell my son about my arthritis, and one of them was a car accident. And so because this car accident happened when he was almost 3 years old, for a long time he said, "Remember when I used to think that the car accident gave you
Mm,
arthritis?" He's like, "Because it happened." Like my arthritis was flaring up later, and in his mind, like the kids are just trying to make sense of the world,
right.
trying to tell a story about like mommy got in a car accident and then she has an owie in her hands, and then long term, maybe it's not like he's 10 now. So we've had like multiple little conversations over the years to be like, actually, car accident doesn't give you arthritis typically, although technically
It can, yeah, yeah, I
you
have
can
a
get
friend whose mom, yeah,
you can get osteoarthritis, yeah, but not rheumatoid arthritis,
right,
yeah, or not inflammatory autoimmune arthritis doesn't, occur, other than the fact that any traumatic event can spark your immune system to kinda
right.
go wackadoodle. But, like, injuries, post-injury osteoarthritis is, like, more of a common thing. But long story short, we had to tell us, talk about what had happened, talk about, like, I had a owie on my bottom, not related, it was from a pilonidal cyst, which is like a tailbone
Mhm.
cyst, had to get surgery there, and so it was really hard for me to, like, sit or be comfortable for a long time after
Yep,
that.
I
And so
get that.
mommy had, and, so we had to have all these stories around everything. And, so, I think
And they
that
like to talk about it, like kids
yes.
enjoy, if you bring it up, they want to talk about it over and over again. And it's interesting because you can tell that they want to talk about it. So obviously that's something that they need to process it because they're very
Mhm.
willing to, relive it, talk about it over and over again.
Yeah. Have you read the book to your children?
Oh yeah,
Kenzie's little
definitely. They're my biggest fans. My
Oh,
oldest daughter's she always listens to all my stories and she gives great feedback actually. She's like my first critique partner. So
yeah.
yeah,
She's,
they
like,
were
12 now or?
she just turned 13, yeah, my older one.
Oh,
And then my
nice.
younger one's 10, same as your son.
Oh,
So they're always hearing my stories and hearing all
that's
my
sweet.
ideas. So yeah, definitely. And they just, and the fact that it's loosely based on our family experience, so it's really
Mm,
special that this is my debut
yeah.
book, and it's just, obviously a really special book for our family, so they're very
Yeah,
happy about it.
that's oh, it's so yeah, yeah, there's I noticed that, I didn't wanna be like, "Am I projecting?" 'Cause, like, there's 2 little kids, and I was like, "Oh, okay, she has 2 kids," like
Yeah, like
yeah.
it's not a true story by any means,
Right,
but it
right.
is. So in the story, as you know, mom goes to the hospital. So that is, yeah, that was, inspired by our own experience when I went to the hospital. And there's no
Mhm.
little tree in real life, but my
Yeah.
daughter does love plants. So
Oh, that's so sweet. Yeah. And is there anything else, because we kind of I got us a little bit on a couple different tangents, but is there anything else you wanted to say about the importance of like disability representation in picture books or just children's literature in general?
yeah, for sure. So, well, we're seeing a lot of more diverse picture books that represent a variety of realities and experiences, which is amazing. And I'm really honored to add to this conversation to represent kids like Kenzie, who have a chronically ill caregiver, and also kids that have chronic illness themselves. As you
Mhm.
said, it is an area that we need a lot more representation on. And I think it's so powerful for young people to know that there's other kids out there that have similar experiences, thoughts, and feelings, and I hope that in seeing this, they'll be empowered to and open to having more conversations. And
Mm.
I'm also working on some other manuscripts that feature children that have chronic illness. And I hope that someday these will be out in the world too, because I think it's really powerful for a child to see a character in a book who's going through a similar experience to them.
Yeah. Yeah. I really love what you said about like getting everything out in the open because if we a lot of parents are afraid, "I don't wanna tell my kid about what I'm going through because I don't wanna scare them." Well, like, life is scary, period. This is my little soapbox. So it's like, you can either talk about it or not. Like, and if you don't talk about it with your kid, like, that bad things can happen to good people, and, like, then they're gonna try to sort through to make sense of it on their own. So wouldn't you as a parents rather be in the conversation with them? That's my
Right.
opinion.
Well, and I feel like it's scary too. The unknown is very scary, right? So if you don't
Yes.
talk about it and it's a secret, that also to me feels scary for a child because they're probably imagining the worst. So,
Yeah. Yeah, and, it's I felt I often felt I don't know if you feel this as a parent, like, I feel like these um, 2 opposing urges. One is, like, the urge to just tell them it's gonna be okay, and, like, we're gonna fix everything and solve everything, and because you want to relieve their anxiety. And then there's the dedication to the truth, which is right that there's no
mhm.
guarantee you can take the medicine, you could do everything in your toolbox, but sometimes you're still going to feel bad. And like, how do you find that balance between being honest with the realities of the difficulties of your chronic illness with um also wanting to provide, like, a sense of hope and stability, like, how have you balanced that? I
Yeah,
don't think anyone knows, but
that
yeah.
yeah, that's really just that's a really hard question. I think also it has to do with their age, right? I mean,
Yeah,
your
yeah.
3-year-old is going to be a lot different than your 7 to 10-year-old, right? Every year, I think it's a little different. You can tell them a little bit more. Um,
Yeah, that's a good point,
that
yeah.
I think that's why books like this are really important because maybe and I'm hoping with this picture book, children do get that you leave with a sense of hope. They leave with the sense that I am strong enough, things are hard, but I am strong. And
Yes.
that's just yeah, you're right. There are hard things in life and we can't just tell the children, yeah, everything, I'm going to be fine, everything's fine. Well, no, everything's
Yeah.
not fine. However, we're strong and, there's things we can do.
Mhm, mhm.
So yeah, it's hard, but I do think it does change over time, the conversation that you have. And picture books are great that way, and that they do deal with tough things, but you leave with a sense of hope. And I think that's sort of the same as maybe a discussion that you could have with a child where, we talk about some difficult things, but we have medications, we have
Yeah,
treatment, so we
yeah.
do have that sense of hope. And that there's hard times, like in the book, there's hard times when mom has to go to the hospital and when Kenzie's sad, but
Mhm,
there's also a lot of fun and joy. We see the family doing each season, they're doing fun activities together and they love that time
mhm.
together. So there's a lot of joy. There's all the feelings, just like life is. That's what I always say is I love big-hearted books that have all the feelings. So I tried to also put that in this book and in this family as well.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head of, like, knowing things can be hard, whether it's a chronic illness, whether it's something else, like a bully in your school or,
Right.
whether it's, I don't know, some other some challenge on your
Like
sport
a
team.
learning disability or
Yeah.
anything, right? Those are really difficult too.
And that you can that kind of mantra I do a lot of, like, I mean, mantra is not in a very broad sense, meaning, like, I have, like, "We can do hard things" is, like, on my behind this computer, like, I have, like, a poster of that, like, just
Yeah,
reminding
that's one
myself,
of
like,
our families too that we like.
yeah, which, and it's again, it's a more sustainable source of hope because I think the books I don't like are the ones again where it's like, and then we fixed it, and then they were better, and then we never worried again, and life's, it's like that's just
Yeah.
not,
It's not reality, yeah.
yeah, yeah, and um, so anyway, I love the book, so I really hope everyone checks it out. Again, I'm gonna have all the links. It's called Kenzie's Little Tree, and the illustrations are absolutely gorgeous.
Yes, Emily did an amazing job. I'm just in
Yeah,
awe of her because I don't draw at all. So yeah,
yeah. Oh, I know. I have. It's
I
weird.
would not be illustrating it. Yeah, people are like, "Did you
Yeah.
illustrate it?" No, believe me, I would not be doing that. So
Yeah, I love, like, I love drawing, but yeah, it's not like my talent or whatnot, but it's fun to just, like, as an outlet.
yeah, that's great.
Um,
Yeah,
but
creative
but
outlet.
speaking of, just we talked initially about creativity as, like, a coping tool. Is before we go to the rapid fire questions, is there anything else, that you'd wanna share about that's in your coping toolbox? Like, this could be like we mentioned, mantras or, like, things like, therapy or social support or anything else that helps you cope.
Yeah, well, what helps me cope a lot is actually my family, just knowing how much they
Mhm.
care about me. The girls always wanting to do fun activities together and just, knowing how important that is for them. I also do a lot for my stress level and anxiety. Like I do therapy,
Mhm.
meditation, strength training that I do with physiotherapist, walking. I walk a lot. I try to walk and pick up my kids from school every day. Also, I do a lot of reading and lots of dark chocolate is also in my
Yeah.
coping mechanism.
Yay. Oh my god, me too. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
yeah, number
I gotta have it every day. That's
yeah,
it.
I was gluten-free for a very, very long time. I recently actually learned that I could reintroduce gluten because
Oh,
I
nice. Yeah,
know I don't
that's a
have
hard one.
yeah, I know I don't have celiac, but for a while when I started this in the late 2000s, um, it really, really I have gastroparesis, which is a different, like, GI motility disorder, and I noticed that, oh, when I avoided gluten, my GI system, like, was a little faster and worked better, but my dietitian I was working with was like, since you don't have celiac, your gut has probably changed a lot over time. You could try, if you're interested, just reintroducing gluten slowly, seeing how you do with it." And I was like, "I've been so diligent about avoiding it for so long." And then I reintroduced it and I was like, wow, my stomach's actually okay now, and I never even considered
That's
that could happen.
exciting. You must
So
have
I'm
been so
like,
happy.
knock on wood, like, so yeah, chocolate and then now, having some of my glutinous treats, but for those, I'm sorry if those are still gluten-free, I'm sorry that I'm bragging about my newfound ability to digest gluten.
Yeah,
But
a lot of people with arthritis too do try the
yeah,
starch-free diet, and I did try it for a short amount of time, but it didn't
yeah,
go well for me. And
me
also
neither.
having IBD is hard
Mhm.
because I was just having like chicken, olive oil, and grapes. That's all I was having for a few days, and it just was like it was too much oil. I don't it just bothered my gut, and then it was
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
so
um, the best evidence at the population level, for inflammatory arthritis is just like a Mediterranean style eating pattern. But that's a very general recommendation. Each individual is so different, especially if you have a GI comorbidity like you and I have that, yeah, I couldn't do a full Mediterranean diet because beans make me
oh,
really
yeah, I can't
inflammatory
do
for
beans.
me.
I can't do any
Y-
beans. No,
Me
those are
neither.
completely no. I can't
Yeah,
do
and
beans or onions or garlic. Those
me
are all
too.
off. Yeah, those are
Yeah.
terrible, yeah.
Yeah, and it doesn't, it just no dietary intervention I've tried has ever made a real difference in my inflammatory arthritis, and that's just me. The exercise and stress management and sleep make a huge difference for me. So, but you might be different who listening, if someone listening. So,
Right.
um, that's what's hard. I have to almost like one of my coping tools is saying like at some point I have to just say enough. Like I've done and I'm good. It's good enough. Like I don't want to spend my whole life maximizing my symptom control. Because the whole point of symptom control is to like live my life.
Definitely, yeah.
So eat the chocolate. In conclusion.
Yeah, in terms of coping, so I also have, but I mean, I typically still have, I have joint pain. Sometimes it comes and goes. Right now it's in my hips, actually. It sort of comes different
Mhm.
spots. I guess that's the arthropathy.
Mhm.
And often have some like abdominal pain most days a little bit, and then a lot of like just back muscle tension and stuff.
Mm,
So some other coping to do with that, what I'm 'cause I'm also teaching half time, so I
yeah.
have a standing desk. I do a lot of standing while I teach. I have this table that lifts up and down, and then
Nice.
I can prop my binder on a stand that I was given by HR, so that's really helpful for my neck. And
Mm,
also when I'm writing as well, I just got a nice stand-up desk so I can alternate. I like to alternate a lot between sitting and standing because I find with the AI
nice.
sitting a lot really bad
Mhm.
for the back. Also, when I stand up now, my hips really hurt. So I like
Mhm.
to do alternate a lot between sitting and standing with those kind of special desks.
Yeah, I honestly think that people who have these conditions should get like an honorary occupational therapy degree because like you know what I mean? Like that's what an OT would tell you probably. I mean, we have more than that in our scope, but point being like it's like you learn to become an expert in your own care and
Right. Well, you know what hurts when you do it, right? So it's like, oh,
yeah.
okay, well, I got to try this because sitting is not my friend anymore for too long.
I do that too. I'm constantly changing. I'm at my standing desk right now. I'm sitting at it, but I change throughout the day a lot. I try not to change in the middle of a podcast, but um only
Yeah.
because of noise and stuff. But that's really, really helpful. And so moving on to the more quote unquote rapid fire questions, which can be long,
Okay.
but yeah, what are some of your best words of wisdom who've been newly diagnosed, with IBD or AS?
Okay. Yeah, well, this kind of goes for both. So when we talked about food earlier, and so mine would be because when I first got diagnosed, I did a lot of, what works for other people, and so I tried, a lot of things that I saw online, probably shouldn't have, but so my advice is to eat what works for you and your family rather than trying something that's very restrictive. So I've tried a lot of diet protocols. They can be really expensive and really time consuming. So especially if you have children, it can be really difficult. And some people do find success, but I never found success with those. So I would, just try to figure out what actually works for you and stick with that. And then give yourself time to pursue a passion or creative pursuit, as this provides joy and is a great distraction from pain and thoughts about your illness. So even though it might feel like, I don't have time, I have to do research, I have to learn about the illness, try to carve out a little bit of time for something that you love, because that just mentally and physically, I find, helps a lot.
That's huge, and I think the nutrition rabbit hole is something that I've talked about a lot on this podcast, but if you're a new listener, I very much agree that proceed with caution. You end up getting into this selective algorithm on social media of only success stories of people who've tried these diets and it worked for them. And there's a lot of people who, they get so exhausted and burned out from the things not working. They're not going to sit there and keep making post after post after post about it not working, right? And so you almost get this warped sense that this is what works for everyone. which is objectively not true in the case of inflammatory arthritis in particular. I know with IBD, it's different because it is your digestion is like the
Right.
primary thing. But I think it takes a lot of courage to say that, like, look, I spent all this time and energy and money and it didn't work. Like and that is 100% like the way you presented it is the way I feel about it, which is it's not your fault. But some people feel ashamed. They feel like I must not have done it right, or I must not.
Yeah, there definitely is that. Yeah, you do feel, oh, well, maybe I wasn't strict enough, but it's difficult because it's so, yeah, you get so regimented and yeah, it can be tough for sure.
Yeah, and it can lead to a eating disorder called orthorexia, which is where it's a disease where people become obsessed with only eating healthy or clean foods, and it is recognized in the DSM as an eating disorder because it's an unhealthy obsession with eating healthy because it's not actually it
Which
promotes.
probably happens a lot for people that have chronic illnesses and try, right? Like, wow, I started off trying to do a diet because you think, you know,
Yeah,
if I work really hard at this, I can, quote unquote cure myself or,
yeah,
feel better without medication. But yeah,
ex-
it didn't happen for me. And I think it's really great that you have your room to thrive because you
yeah.
can give people dispel that misinformation, right, in that group as well. So
Yeah. Oh, well, perfect segue, 'cause the other thing I was gonna quickly say when you said about devoting time to a passion or pursuit, like in the Room to Thrive framework, Thrive is like an acronym, and V stands for values and valued
okay.
activities. And we actually specifically go through like reconnecting with what brings you purpose and what brings you joy. And that is initially I thought, oh, are people not gonna like this section because they're gonna think it's not like they're learning as much directly about arthritis, right? But as time has gone on, I've realized that this is actually one of the most important sections of the whole program because
Yeah.
exactly like you said,
Yeah, I think it's amazing that you have that because that is such a and that's something that when you go to the doctor, they're not gonna tell you to do, go
yeah,
write a book or go, go
yeah,
paint, right? So, but it
yeah,
is something that really helps you thrive, right? And just feel better
yeah.
generally, physically and mentally.
No, it's so true. Yeah, it take like you mentioned earlier, it takes your mind off of what you're going through,
Mhm.
and it also yeah gives you sense of satisfaction. And do you have we kind of mentioned earlier inspirational quotes or things that help you on tough days? Do you have any
Yeah,
specific?
well, funny enough, so I can do hard things
Yeah,
is what we yeah, that's
I love
something that
it.
we find well, we just find it whether it's the adults or the kids, it's something, we all have things that we find tough to face in our day. And we find it applies to a lot of situations. And it's something just, it's easy to remember. I can do hard things. And so, yeah, we say that a lot to our kids. And yeah, so
I
we
love
try to
that.
think of that as well.
Same wavelength.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, and do you have a favorite arthritis gadget or tool in your toolbox?
My heating pad is my yeah, favorite thing, like, every night. You're not supposed to lay on your heating pad, but I do. I
These are
re
what you seem like a rule follower, so but
I
I'm like,
am, but I
I
know
do
I'm
too.
like, "I don't care, I'm
No.
breaking this rule because it's just so good." I read my books, yeah. Gonna tell you
Yeah.
about my books soon, but yeah, I love my books, read them laying on my heating pad. I have a
Awesome.
cushion in the car because I had, like, a tailbone. I still have like, I can't really sit on soft seats, it hurts my tailbone.
Mhm,
So
mhm.
I have to so I always like even right now I'm sitting on a hard stool. I prefer hard things. I can't sit on my couch. It hurts me after like a couple minutes.
Oh,
So
nice.
I have a car cushion that has a little divot for the tailbone so that my tailbone doesn't hit the
I
seat.
have the same one. I have the same exact one because
We're
it
twins.
yeah, it's so simply that was because of my after my pilonidal cystectomy, which is the surgery that removed the cyst from my tailbone in 2016. Yeah, that I would really need to take the pressure off
Okay, yeah.
of
Well, they don't know. I did a bunch of tests. I did nothing happened to my tailbone, but it's just I think it's just part of the AS. I
it's
don't
just
know,
a
but
yes,
they
I
never
think
figured it out. But anyway,
yeah.
it can flare up if I sit on a soft surface for too long. So I sit on
Mhm.
that and my exercise bands and
Yeah,
then just reading and writing to escape from
yeah.
life in general.
Oh my gosh, well, that leads us perfectly to the next question. Do you have a favorite book or movie or show recently?
Yeah, so I don't watch that much TV anymore. I don't seem to have much time, but I do read a lot still. So I always read in bed, as I said, on my heating pad.
Mhm.
And so a couple of recent favorites, All the Colors of the Dark by Chris
I
Whitaker.
don't know
It's
that
really
one.
good. The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by
Ooh,
V.E.
okay.
Schwab.
Okay.
And I've been doing a lot of Kristen Hanna binging lately. I just love her. She's so amazing.
What
So the
is
great
she the one that wrote All the Light We Can't See? No, what did she write?
No, she did her new one's The Women, but I haven't read it yet.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
The Nightingale was her
Oh,
big
The
one that
Nightingale.
yeah, The Nightingale,
That
so
was
good. Yeah,
beautiful.
like so
Yeah.
sad, but so her books are yeah,
Yeah.
they're deep, they're sad, but just amazing. You get all the feels. So the Great Alone, True Colors, and Home Again, I've read all in the last few months. So she has a
Okay.
lot of books, so I love when I find an author that I love, and then I just keep looking, oh, what else do they have? And I just keep reading them. So
Yeah, yeah. I remember I read All the Light We Can't See, which is World War II, and The Nightingale back to back, and I was like, "Am I doing what am I doing to myself?" But they were both so good.
yeah.
Um, so
You
thank
just
you
want to
for
read all the
recommending.
time. They're just so good.
Yeah, yeah. I've gotten back. I will say for anyone listening who had a goal in 2025 or whatever year it is you're listening, of stopping yourself, like breaking the habit of just scrolling your phone before going to bed instead of reading before going to bed. Because my whole life, one of the only constants has been up until 2020 was reading before I go to bed. Like I brought my Kindle on my honeymoon. I brought my Kindle. Like I always read
Yeah,
before
I
bed.
always read before bed.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but starting during the pandemic, somewhere along the line, social media, my fault, my own like lack of self-regulation, I was like just scroll, 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 my scrolling on the internet and Instagram and everything else, which was providing a lot of great social outlet, social interaction, but it gets to the point where you're just endlessly scrolling, and I was
Right.
missing that, and so in 2024, like I was like, I have to get back into reading. Like I'm missing this part of me, like reading an actual story instead of like all these snippets of life.
Right.
So anyway, I got a new Kindle cover to kind of like
Oh, good.
reinvigorate my interest in reading actual and I joined a book club in Seattle called the Radical Romance Book Club, which is actually
Ooh.
all about it's about books, romance books, which first of all, I had like a knee-jerk reaction against because I was like, I don't read romance books. Like those are just like not real literature or whatever, which is totally wrong. I was totally biased to me. But it was what hooked me was its representation of communities that aren't usually represented in romance. So
Okay.
people with disabilities, different sexual orientations, different genders, different ethnic backgrounds, different parts of the world, different ways, like different religions, people, involved in finding a partner and love in all different ways. And the one that they were reading was a woman with rheumatoid arthritis. In Oh Was Only You. I don't know if you've heard of that one.
No, I haven't actually.
It's Chloe Lisi. I don't know how to pronounce her last name. I was actually gonna have her on the podcast and we had to reschedule. Um, she has she herself has like chronic pain and has been open about that. She's also neurodiverse, like she's on the autism spectrum. And so she has all her characters in her books have like different, different things going on, whether it's like ADHD or whether it's arthritis. And Oh Was Only You.
Okay,
She
I'll have to check that out. That sounds
Yeah,
great.
the main character has RA in that book, and, so it's awesome. Or and anxiety is also represented, one of the
Okay.
characters I read the whole series, there's 6 of them, and, the Bergman Brothers series, and the character I related to the most actually wasn't the one with RA, it was the, male character with, OCD and who has a pa and anxiety and panic disorder,
Okay.
like, has a panic attack on an airplane, which has, like, happened to me before, so,
Oh, yeah.
like, yeah, but no, they're beautiful. Okay, so sorry. Those are good books. Okay, back to you. What does it mean to you to live a good life and thrive with autoimmune arthritis and chronic illness?
To me, it means being able to enjoy activities with my family, do meaningful work, and have the time and energy to do my creative passions.
I mean, I think to myself as you're telling your story, what would have happened if it wasn't for the pandemic? You know what I mean? Not to be
Yeah.
like silver linings in like a trite way, but like, would you have reinvigorated your creative interest?
Yeah, I mean,
Hopefully.
I hope I would. I think it just gave me a little bit more time, but
Yeah.
it kind of coincided with as my girls were getting a little bit, they were just starting to get a little bit
Yes.
older. So
Yes.
they were getting out of that stage where, I had to do absolutely everything for them and with them.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
they were getting a bit more independent.
Mhm.
And I think at that point, it had just been so long since I had done anything creative that it's almost like hitting like a breaking point. Like it's like I had to do
Yeah.
something creative because I've always been a creative person and I had just been stifling that for so long
Mm,
that I just, yeah, I don't, so
yeah.
I think I
You
would
probably
have,
would've.
but I
Yeah.
do think it was great because it gave me, silver lining, but it gave me that, little bit of extra time. Although looking back, I really didn't have that much extra time now that I say
Yeah.
that because,
'Cause your kids were, like,
yeah, like I
virtual
was,
school, right?
yeah, they
Yeah.
were in virtual school, so they weren't, there wasn't that much work they were getting. And as an elementary teacher, it's
Yeah.
like you can't handle that. So I would
Yeah.
like every weekend I'd plan out like lesson plans and extra stuff
Mhm.
for them for like each day of the week. So it was a lot. So it was, and they were home all the time, of course. So, and I was
You
also
didn't have a
teaching
lot.
at that time online.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess looking back on it actually was pretty busy. It's just that, I wasn't driving them to dance or driving them, it
Mhm.
wasn't that kind of stuff. So in the evenings you had a bit more time.
Yeah, that totally makes sense, and I think you're right that, I think once when my son hit kindergarten, which did coincide with the pandemic, it is typical to have more, your kid gets more independent, and then you have more
Right.
time to go back to what is important to you. So, yeah, I'm glad it happened. I can't wait for more people to get the book. Is there anything
Yay.
else you would want to share with the audience before we wrap up?
Just about, so I've partnered with a couple bookstores in Canada, Rookery Books and the Spaniel's Tail Bookstore, and they're donating 10% of the proceeds from Kenzie's Little Tree for the next few months to Crohn's and Colitis Canada and the
Oh,
Arthritis
wow.
Society, which is super generous. And then for American readers, if you pre-order a copy of Kenzie's Little Tree and fill in the Google form on my website, I will make a personal donation to Crohn's and Colitis Foundation in the US and the Arthritis Foundation. And you can find all that info on my website. And it sounds like Cheryl will have all that listed
Yes.
on the show notes.
Yeah, that's really that's awesome, and I know that so many, you know, um, people are gonna be helped, by this book, and hopefully that, the nonprofits can also, like, maybe maybe encourage people to order it as well, you know what I mean? So it's a
Yeah.
win-win.
Yeah, it's so nice of the bookstores are amazing. It's just so generous of them. And I'm
Mm,
really grateful for that. And any fundraising for chronic illness is, makes me happy. It's amazing.
yeah, I love it. Well, and so I am gonna put all your links in the show notes, but where can, just in case someone, like, has their Instagram pulled up right
Okay.
now, where can people find you online?
So my website is just my whole name,
Mhm.
AlisonMagali.com.
1 L.
Yeah. Do you want me
Okay.
to, should I spell it
Yeah.
or just?
Uh,
Sure.
yeah, why
Okay.
not? Mhm.
AlisonMcgauley.com. And then I'm on social media, but it's pretty much all my handles are just my name, like at Alison
That's
Magali on
smart.
Instagram and Blue Sky, Twitter, all the things. So it's pretty
I
easy to
wish I
find.
had
If you
done
know
this.
my name, it's easy to find me.
No, that's smart. I mean, I unfortunately I wish I had done that, but I couldn't have done it because my name's Cheryl Crow, like the singer,
Yes.
but even if I had, I would've gotten confused with the algorithms and stuff, but anyway, yeah,
Yeah,
that's
I was
amazing.
lucky. I got Alison Magali. Actually, someone just approached, and now there's another Alison Magali who just approached me on Instagram that, was like, oh, but there's hardly any, I think there's only like two or three of us in the world. So yeah,
Wow,
so I got
awesome.
all the Alison Magali handles. So I was pretty lucky.
That's smart. That's super smart. Well, thank you so much. I know it is emotional labor, I consider it, to share your story, even if you're in a good place now. It's a lot of mental work to go back and talk about some of these difficult things. And so I really appreciate that you took the time today to share your story. I know it's going to help a lot of people. So thank you for coming
Well,
on the
thank you
Arthritis
so
Mind
much
podcast.
for all the support, for having me on and supporting Kenzie's Little Tree and all your words of wisdom. I really appreciate it.
It's been wonderful. So, hope everyone will go check that out, and we'll talk to you later. Bye bye for now.
Okay. Thanks, Cheryl. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.